Hey guys, welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington, everybody. My name is Kathryn Kaufman, and I'm a psychic medium here in Lexington, Kentucky. And this is my every Monday night live chat show, Monday Night Live in Lexington. So hey to both pages of Facebook and hey over here to Instagram. And I will do a few shout outs while people are joining. Hey to Cheryl Dalton, Zoe, Elisa, Martin Garcia, Miranda, Gary, and Kim. Nice to see you guys tonight. Hey to Jill Jones. Hey to Matt Cummings over here on Instagram. I'll try to do as many shout outs as I can over here on Instagram, but the print is so little. I don't know. Sometimes I can't really see it that well, but anyway, hopefully my new glasses will help. Hey to George McKinney and Miranda Foy. Thanks for joining me tonight. Shout out to Melissa Begley and her sidekick, Miss Cleo, two of my favorite girls in the whole world. Hey to Shane Garner. So tonight we are going to go over Appalachian funerary rituals, and they are very, very interesting. And I'm also going to play a clip of some singing from an Appalachian funeral because it is very beautiful, and you won't hear anything like it if you live in a city. Hey to Beth Ann, Tom Driver, and Kathleen Evans and Philip Travis. Hey to Betty Jo Coffee as well. So let's get started. What areas are we talking about when we say Appalachia? So these are the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountains, and the river valleys of the French Broad and Catawba and North Carolina. That makes up the whole Appalachian chain here. And all of this has a long history that is taken from the local tribes that live there, but also a lot of Scottish and Irish traditions that were instilled into those communities from people who immigrated here. So it's a very diverse background and culture that we're looking at. So a lot of these peoples were very isolated in these communities, and so they were extremely self-sufficient. Everything was self-sufficient. Hey to Fiorin Woods over here on Instagram. Thanks for joining. And Dawn M. Adams and Carl Grimm and Pamela Thompson. Hey to Pam. Miss you, girl. So anyway, one of the first things that happened when somebody got sick was they would call a local healer. They were called granny witches, and they would know all of the herbal remedies. They would know a lot of medical things that would help the person that was sick, but they also use like special magical cures as well. So they use combination of natural cures, magical cures, and some also really good physical things to try to cure. And so when somebody passed on, it was thought that that was God's will, and so it was, unless it was a tragic accident or something, it was more readily accepted. So Appalachian communities and the people that lived in them were no strangers to somebody passing away, or to the sight of a dead body, or to the preparation of a dead body or the burial. Everybody had kind of a hand in helping and, you know, consoling each other in these communities. Hey to Kendra over here on Instagram. Thanks for joining. Jennifer Kress, Leslie Graham, and a special shout out to Corey Southwood up in Salem. How are you tonight? And shout out to Dawn M. Adams Johnson. Thanks for joining us. So now I haven't personally seen this because my husband is from southeastern Kentucky, and we go down there pretty frequently, but I have never seen this before. Maybe some of you guys have, and you can shout out and let me know if you've seen anything like this. But in some of the stuff that I researched, it said that a lot of the homes were made with 2 front doors. One door was used for the living and happy type of visits, and the other door, it says, was used for like a death door or a funeral door. And so those would be used for people coming in for the wake or sitting up with the dead. And so those were known as the funeral door. Prior to commercialization of the funeral industry, there really weren't any funeral homes or public cemeteries in these small communities. And so people, whoever had the largest house or in the home of the person that passed away, they would have like the wake and their funeral, and then they would be buried really almost in the backyard or in the hill, on the hill behind the home, wherever the little family cemetery was. So public cemeteries, they really didn't have back then. And we're talking 1800, early 1900s, mid 19th century, the funeral homes started to become more popular, and then this process was more commercialized. So in the early days, they really didn't have this. Now, I had talked to my mother-in-law about this particular piece of information, and if any of you guys have any questions, please just put them in the comment section. For those of you that are on my TV professional page, I won't be able to see your comments. If you want to join the live chat, hop on over here to my personal page. But otherwise, you can just watch on the TV channel if you want. Hey to Debbie Fultz and BG Blocher and Wendy Baker and Natalie. And also a shout out to Leslie Graham and Jennifer Kress. Thanks for joining. So this is about, this was what I talked to my mother-in-law was about the bell tolling and the saying, for whom the bell tolls. So in small Appalachian communities, the local church bell would be rung as soon as somebody had passed on, but they would ring it for as many times as the person was alive in years. So let's say a child died and they were 6 years old, the church bell would ring 6 times. Or if somebody was 45 years old, it would ring 45 times. And this was to alert the people of who had passed on and how old they were. So depending on the age of the deceased, the church bell would chime once for every year in their life. After you were notified by the church bell tolling, the women in the community would bring food to the immediate family of the deceased. And the family would be busy making, burial preparations and talking to the men that had come in from the fields about, digging the burial spot and making the coffin. So those are the funerary preparations that they would be discussing and talking about at the same time that they would be having this small gathering. So prayer quilts, yes, that's coming, Dawn. Absolutely, that was a big part of this. Let's see, and Dawn says, yes, please leave one's holler or mountain to procreate. Yes. So back to the bell tolling. So they would talk to, the family would talk to the men about, the burial spot, who would be available to dig for the coffin, and who would be available to help and or even just make the coffin itself. Now, a lot of coffins were made out of solid tree trunks, and a lot of them were just made out of pine. So the ones that were made out of the tree trunks were called tree coffins. So the tree coffins, I think probably that would have been really, really difficult to make And sometimes it was necessary. A lot of the miners were helpful in this, but sometimes it was necessary to dynamite the area that the coffin was going to be buried in to remove some of the stone, because the mountains, in some areas, the stone was too close to the surface to allow the coffin to be buried very deep. So you would have to dynamite that out in order to have the coffin have enough burial clearance, I guess. So the outside of the coffin was covered in black material, and there was usually some basic material that lined the inside of the coffin, which was linen or muslin or just cotton. And so these were like very simple type of coffins. Now here's another interesting fact that I found out, is that you know, what if your little small community didn't have a church? So in that case, they would use a dinner bell. Some people would have like a dinner bell in the backyard, and a lot of Amish homes have this as well. And so this would be rung when the men were to come in from the fields to eat dinner. But if it's rung at an abnormal time during the day, and many times like the age of somebody who's passed away, then everybody around would know that that dinner bell was being rung for whoever had just passed on. Let me check for questions. Hey to Shane Gardner, Tricia, Helen, and Veronica. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions. Shout out to Michelle, Amita Madden, and Tammy Simon, and Joyce Sells. So let me check Instagram over here. So we're good. Okay. So after they tolled the bell and they made their funeral preparations, every mirror in the home would be draped with a dark cloth, and the curtains would be closed. Now, this was believed that by covering the mirror, a spirit could not use the mirror for a portal and would cross over into their new life, and not be kind of hanging around using the mirror as a portal to come and go. Also, the hands on the clock would be stopped. Now, this was twofold. The meaning behind this was twofold. Hey to Sarah Vest, kisses to Sarah down in Tennessee. Thanks for joining me this evening. The hands of the clock were stopped for two reasons. The first one was to record the time of the death of the person who'd passed away. The second was because they believed that time stood still for the person who had passed on. Let me check Instagram. There's no questions there. Hey to Teresa and Asaya. Thanks for joining me on Instagram tonight. And the families were involved and responsible for preparing the body. Now, how many of us can say that today? You know, certainly as a 25-year veteran of nursing, I prepared many bodies, and that's one thing that's been taken out of the norm of society today, is we're not used to relating to a dead body. We're not used to seeing it. We're not used to touching it. We're not used to helping prepare the loved one's body that was done so many years ago. And that was a natural part of society back then. And so now we've taken death out of the norm, and it is something very foreign for us right now in society. Hey to Lori Schultz. So preparation of the body was a big thing that people had to do in Appalachia, and there was no means of preserving the body. So they did figure out some techniques, like tricks and tips on how to preserve as much as they could of the body while the wake and the funeral were going on. So to prepare the body, the deceased would be laid out, and it remained in the home until burial. Now, if it was too cold to have the wake or the funeral, and they knew that the ground was frozen and they would not be able to dig the hole for the coffin, the deceased would be placed in an area that was very, very cool to wait until the ground actually thawed out so that they could be buried. Now, this could be somebody's, I hate to say it, somebody's root cellar, somebody's, basement that was extra cold, but the body had to be stored some way in the cool until the ground was thawed out so that they could actually bury the body. So they had a laying out board or a laying out table, and was called a cooling table. Now, this could have been an ironing board placed in between two chairs, and these were put in front of the fireplace, but there was no fire. There would be no fire in the fireplace during this time. And on the cooling table, or with the cooling table, what they used to do, and I just found this out this evening from my mother-in-law, thank you, Mert, love you, Ma, is they would mix moonshine and camphor together. And so what they would do, the moonshine would keep the body cool, and the camphor would prevent the skin from turning dark, prevent lividity. So other tips that they would do would be to put aspirin into the wash water. They would, after they laid the body out, they would prep the body and wash the body with warm water, but they would put salt, not salt, but aspirin tablets in the water, and that would keep the lividity out of the skin. So that was another interesting fact that I found out. So, and this was called laying out. Again, they would have certain things that they would do to prevent rigor mortis, or to address rigor mortis if it happened, and that would be the breaking of the bones and the cracking when somebody would get stiff. So the board would be covered with a sheet and a rope, and that would be used to tie the body down to keep it straight and prevent it from suddenly the contraction of the rigor mortis. Now, this was very, very interesting. There's an old Scottish tradition called seining, and I'm going to spell it for you in case you want to do a little bit more research on it. S-A-I-N-I-N-G, and it was a practice of blessing and protecting the body. Now, seining was performed by the oldest woman in the family, or the granny witch, okay? And this was to light a candle and wave it over the corpse 3 times. And then also they would put 3 handfuls of salt into a wooden bowl and place it on the body's chest to prevent the corpse from rising unexpectedly. And that's called seining. I'd not heard of that either, but that is very interesting. Let me check for questions. So Dawn says that her grandmother had a big bell on a post, meaning get your butt home, usually to eat. We would hear it hundreds of yards away. Absolutely, Dawn, and those were also used to, if they didn't have a church bell, those were also used to call people in that somebody had passed on. Hey to Greta Hanshu, Trisha Langley, and Heba. And Dawn says, sad when your child has no color on their lips in death, not remotely natural, but give them a chance and they correct that. There's so many things that have been lost through time and just not recording all these things that these self-sufficient people did to preserve the bodies and to make them look more natural. So many things that have been lost that we don't know about. These are just traditions that have been recorded and been passed down to us so that we know about them. But there's so many more that I'm sure that we have just lost. I'm just checking Instagram, make sure there's no questions there. So we're checking our time here. We're good. So once the body was laid out, the arms were folded across the chest and the legs were brought together and tied near the feet. And a handkerchief was tied under the chin. And you know, this tradition kind of formed the morgue packs that we use in the hospital now. Although we're getting more and more away from the morgue packs in the hospital because people have become so disassociated with death that I have to tell you this story, and I can't tell you where it happened or who it happened to, but I have knowledge of some nurses who used a morgue pack and did what the instructions said to prevent the rigor mortis and to keep the mouth closed, and that's one of the little sling that goes under here. And so in Appalachia they used this little handkerchief under the chin to keep the mouth closed and keep it normal looking. And so the nurses prepared the body like they were supposed to, according to the instructions on the morgue pack. This is how you tie it, this is where you put it. And when the body was sent to the funeral home, I guess the family and even the funeral directors did not know what the morgue pack was, and complained to the hospital, got the nurses in trouble. It was a big mess. But just because you know, we have taken death and the preparation of a body so much out of the normal anymore. And so, you know, when we follow our instructions, when we do what we're supposed to, it still can turn out badly. So let's see. Hey to Philip Travis and Joy Sell. So Philip has a comment. My grandmother told me mirrors were covered and curtains drawn so the living in the house couldn't see how bad they looked. Oh, that's a twist on that too. The stuff that I had researched said that they were afraid the dead would use the mirrors as portals. But Philip, I think that yours seems a little bit more down to earth, because when I read that about the portals, I was thinking, so I wonder how they knew that mirrors were portals. But I have to look that up and kind of study that that a little bit more to see how far back that goes. So Joyce Sells has a comment. What was the purpose of taking pictures of the deceased? Good question, Joyce. I didn't find any traditions in Appalachia of taking pictures of the deceased. I know that was big in English society, but I don't know if they did that in Appalachia. Maybe they did, and I just couldn't find any. I couldn't find any history of it. So hey to Joe Ray and Steve Watson. So Dawn says, don't forget about the Y incision. I chose a sheer and tulle dress, not realizing her incisions would show. Absolutely, when they do the autopsy, you have a Y incision that goes down. And so if you have any kind of clothing that is not covering that up, that could be a little bit upsetting. So, hey to Miranda Foy, do you believe spirits in mirrors are not or less evil? From what I once saw. Okay, mirrors are portals, and they bend light. We're going to do another show on that because I've got some more information on that. But once you pass, your spirit leaves the body, and the spirit is made of light. So the mirror is a perfect transmission device for the light that is you, basically. So it can like those mirrors can transport or transmit evil entities and just plain people like us as well. It's like It's like taking an elevator, really. It just depends on who gets on the elevator. So hey to Shane Garner. And so Shane wants to do some shout outs. So Shane wants to shout out to Joanna, Ashley, Holly, and Sabrina. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get on with our content here. To prevent discoloration of the skin, a towel was soaked in soda water and placed over the face until the time for viewing, and that kept the lividity out of the skin of the person who'd passed away, along with the aspirin water, along with the moonshine, and along with the camphor. These were all things that were used to prevent lividity or discoloration in the skin of the person. Also, silver coins were used on the eyes instead of pennies because the pennies would turn the skin green, and that was certainly upsetting for the family. So the loved one's family would be responsible for washing them and preparing the body, and also picking out the what they had attire wise to be buried in and to be viewed in. And the interesting thing about setting up with the dead is the dead were never left alone until the time of the funeral. They were set up with. So it's called setting up with the dead. So after the body was prepared, they were placed in the handmade coffin, and they were placed in the little viewing area. Now, for some who had a larger home, that was a parlor. For some, it was just the ironing board on 2 chairs in front of the fireplace. And this was also called a wake, and the term wake comes from Ireland and Scotland. So most of the times, and this, Dawn, was something that you were talking about, they would place a handmade quilt over the body with flowers, and the flowers and herbs were designed to prevent any type of odors from being detected. So really, flowers were not placed on graves until much later. The things that were placed on the graves, from what I saw, were jewelry, tobacco, pipes, toys, Bibles, even alcoholic beverages. But flowers on top of the grave were to come later on in the 19th century. And so traditional grave decorations were also any of the person's personal effects, shells, rocks, pottery, that was their favorite. But the wildflowers and such, and the herbs were on the body during the wake or the viewing, so that there would not be any type of odor. So these are all really very special traditions, and I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. I'm going to share now a little bit of funeral singing, and this is from southeastern Kentucky. Let me give a couple more shout outs. Hey to Baboos Relax, hey, on Instagram. Hey to Yasmin Jadoon, Sheila, Lyric, and Missy Ferguson. So let's see. Philip says, did your mother-in-law discuss the appearance of the banshee as a harbinger of death? That was well known in Scottish and Irish cultures as the screaming banshee. I didn't find any Appalachian traditions referring to that, but I think that type of thing, Philip, we would probably have to get stories from people, which I think that I found this so interesting that I believe I'm going to talk to a few people and find out. I will find out, Philip, if that is something that was a common occurrence, because maybe they did hear something but didn't attribute it to anything if they weren't really knowledgeable about banshee type of stories. So Miranda says, I once read coins over the eyes were in belief to set the spirit free. Had not heard that one, Miranda, but I will check that out. I will check that out. So I want to play a little bit of the funeral singing because I think it is one of the most beautiful things I've heard. And so let me know if you can hear this okay. I'm not going to show you the video. This is a private video. It's family, but I just want you to hear the singing. And let me know what you think. So, what did you think of that? Has anybody heard that type of singing before? So, Greta says it takes her back to Eastern Kentucky childhood. It's beautiful, isn't it? Okay, so we're wrapping up for the night. The singing was the last little bit, and we're going to find out what's for dinner, David.
Da-da-da-da. We're going to have lamb tacos that Kathryn made. She makes the most awesome tacos. You don't need sauce for it. She cooks it in its own sauce. We go to the Mexican grocery, get peppers. She grinds them up, makes this wonderful slurry of flavor.
Here, let me get that drill for it.
And lets it cook all day until the meat falls off the bone. And then we just have it on a little shell with cilantro and sour cream and cheese. It's all you need. And I made some Cuban-style black beans with homemade sofrito and rice to go with it. So
get with it.
I think we have a pretty good meal.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Thank you, dear.
I got new glasses.
We both got new glasses. So Greta says, Old Regular Baptist. Absolutely, you are correct. Yep. It is Old Regular Baptist singing. You win the prize, Greta. I'm going to have to think of something to get you. Anyway, if you guys enjoy what I do here on this channel and you want to see more, you like it, share the video right now. Hit that share button and share it with your friends and your family. I do have my professional page. It's Kathryn Kaufman, Psychic Medium TV, and there's a lot more videos to view on there. You know, informational videos, instructional videos, how to increase your psychic abilities. Go over there and watch it. Hit the like button on that page, Kathryn Kaufman, Psychic Medium TV. Now, follow me for more videos on that channel. I'm putting all the videos on that channel now. Next Monday, you guys, pay attention. Next Monday, I'm going to have Sifu Karega back on the show, and we're going to do Chinese New Year is coming up February 8th. Next Monday is February 5th, so we're going to go over Chinese New Year. And so you want to find out what's your lucky colors for the year. What are your lucky numbers for the year? This is Year of the Dog. What does that mean? What does that mean? Find out next Monday. Tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to go over Chinese New Year. So, and don't forget, because Valentine's Day is coming up, I am doing couples readings now. So you can go on my website, get a couples reading. It takes both of you to get the reading. So it's something fun for you and your loved one to do for Valentine's Day together. Let me make sure there's no more questions. And I will see you guys next Monday for Chinese New Year. Kisses from Kentucky. Bye, you guys. Signing off.